I took a survey several years ago of insurance defense lawyers, and I asked them, why do so many cases settle just before trial? Like, why not earlier? Why are they settling just before trial? And 75% of the answers were the same across the board. I've got witnesses. And then my follow-up question, of course, is why do you have witnesses?
This is Unlawful. Welcome to Unlawful. I'm Brandon Renken as always, and with me today is Rick Goldberg. If you look him up online, Rick Goldberg is listed as a jury consultant, but I think he does and has done a lot more than that. So I want to talk to him about it today. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So like I said, when you Google your name, jury consultant is the first thing that comes up. And I want to talk about what a jury consultant is and what your expertise is and how you got there. But you've actually done a lot in the litigation space before you became a jury consultant. Isn't that right?
I had a little bit of background right out of college in the insurance arena, where I was working for a large casualty and property insurance provider. And it's when I was working a little bit in underwriting and then a little bit more in claims that I start beginning to see the juxtaposition of how litigation and insurance comes together. So that was my early first experience with litigation right out of college.
So then did you go back to school to get to where you are now?
I did. I was a little bit more of a late bloomer. It was the second half of my career has really been benefited by my going back and getting a master's in behavioral psychology, because I wanted to move into the research and the witness prep portion of trial science. So when I first started, I was really more the informational graphics guy. Tell Rick the complex issues, he'll figure out a way to synthesize it and simplify it, and then create pretty pictures or animations that can tell that story and be persuasive, to a jury. So where I first cut my teeth was in demonstratives and then trial technology, the whole era of taking documents, getting them into PDFs, and then different software that could show those to a jury, do call outs. Same thing with video editing, all of that. So that's where I kind of originally cut my teeth. And I'm probably one of the only trial psychologists and jury consultants that I know of that has done the full gamut of duties and responsibilities in the field.
It's funny because every lawyer who's listening to this fully understands, and my production partner, Josh, who is in the trial support, trial graphics business, right?
Right.
Everybody understands how monumental and critical the value of just one good demonstrative can be to a trial. And what's funny is normal humans, non-lawyers, understand that too, because they've been children reading books. And I'm always taken back to scary stories to tell in the dark. I don't know a single child from my age group who doesn't remember how frightening those stories were. I don't remember a single one of the stories, but I remember all the pictures. Right? So it feels like intuitively we all know how important it is, but the number of people who can really create effective demonstratives is tiny. It's very hard to do, right?
There is probably a small handful of us. And what's really kind of interesting, just the other day, I got a call from a lawyer who's already retired, but his firm pulled him out of retirement. I hadn't worked with this guy, Brian, in like 20 years. And he called me really specifically because he wanted to do some graphics,
pictures,
some demonstratives.
And when you get one and the jury's going to go with you, or the judge is going to go with you, it's like serendipity, right? It's like, holy crap, like this is a picture that really works.
I always thought the best thing you could do is create an animation, but then take your best frame from that animation. Maybe it's that recap, because sometimes you need the animation to build the story step by step. Your final slide or your final screen probably has too much on it to just lead with. So if you build it slowly, then you can end up with a lot of different information on there. And then what I like to tell my clients is we need to turn that into a good old-fashioned exhibit board, and we need to let that then just stay up and be in front of the jury. until the other side realizes it's up and they're ready to take it down.
So you said you got a little experience in the insurance industry. You started realizing the interplay and the excitement or intrigue of the legal practice and litigation when you get on a path towards being a lawyer, and then you find yourself 4 or 5 years in, how to do anything else. How do you jump into an industry like yours?
Make sure the water's deep enough and you just jump. I had also met a gentleman early in my career while I was in the insurance business who was a jury and trial consultant, just like what I do. And I knew that I just saw what he did. And I knew, since I had abandoned my dream of being a game show host, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in front of these kinds of groups or these kind of crowds and do this deep research, analytical work, and figure out how to help win these cases. And so that's where I got inspired.
It's funny that you say game show host, because especially with respect to mock trials, I've done a lot of mock trials, especially recently for whatever reason. And it is interesting how the behavioral psychologist, the administrator, the supervisor of the mock trial is that game show host introduction, like here's the basics type role, like super approachable and charismatic. And it was just funny because as you were saying it, I was putting that together. So once your graphics business got off and running, how did you then, because there's a huge leap in the level of complexity and ability and capability from being a graphics guy, not to belittle that industry, because as I said, I think it's very important. But jumping from there to saying, okay, I'm the guy who knows what the juries are going to do, so talk to me. How do you make that transition?
I guess from my time in trial graphics, I also used to do like all of the litigation for Monsanto up in St. Louis. The firm that handled all their patent litigation was down here in Houston. And so I did 3 or 4 trials a year, was involved in a lot of witness prep sessions, not where I'm prepping, but where I'm watching these incredibly badass attorneys prep and watching what they do. Then I started doing some work with really some of our cities towards the end of the 90s, early 2000s. Some of our cities' really top attorneys, John O'Quinn, Mark Lanier, and then Joe Jamel, of course, where I was their go-to guy. And they would want me around and hearing strategy sessions because they wanted ideas. So they felt like the more I could hear what was happening in this case, the more I could maybe develop concepts and this and that. So I became adept to providing trial strategy. And then it just there was just a shift where I guess the shift was I was purchased. I sold my company to a national jury research firm. And that's where I started seeing how some of the bigger firms that do what I do, jury research. So back in 2004, I was bought, saw how jury research really works, learned it. That's when I went back to school and got my master's. And then I just realized that I could do this myself again. So after my contractual agreement with that company expired and my non-compete expired, I jumped back in the business and opened up really as a research and demonstrative and strategy boutique. I do a lot of insurance defense work, and I took a survey several years ago of insurance defense lawyers, and I asked them, why do so many cases settle just before trial? Like, why not earlier? Why are they settling just before trial? And 75% of the answers were the same across the board. I've got witnesses. And then my follow-up question, of course, is why do you have witnesses?
I thought it was either going to be that, or didn't you know that 6 months ago when they were deposed?